to the believers, I mean, this is our testimony, how we're living life right now. This is our testimony. This is where our life is exhibiting what we say we believe.
What's it like to be at the epicenter of a worldwide pandemic? Today I get to interview two people who know exactly what that's like. Edgar and Rebecca Franks are from the United States of America, but they live in Wuhan, China, just a few miles from where the new coronavirus first broke out and started infecting humans. I get to ask them about what it was like to first learn about the new coronavirus, what their perception was, how seriously they took it, and how their perspective changed over time. But more importantly, I'm going to ask them how they coped as a family, surviving a lockdown with COVID-19 around them. How did they grow closer as a family? How did they connect with their community? And they're not out of the lockdown yet, so what is their hope for the future? The advice that they give is really important for all of us. Here's my interview with Edgar and Rebecca Franks. Well, Edgar and Rebecca Franks, thanks so much for joining me today and being willing to answer some questions. You two are coming out of what I think those in my community are just going into right now, which is experiencing a long-term lockdown, or at least what feels like a long-term lockdown. And I think that you have a lot of wisdom that you can share with us that we need to hear and understand for our families. So thank you so much for being willing to join me today.
Thank you,
Adam.
First of all, I want to know kind of more about you and where you're from and your family. So if you wouldn't mind telling me, where are you from originally, and what you do in Wuhan, China, and about your child as well?
I am born and raised Texan, and Rebecca's from Louisiana. And so we've been here since 2011. We initially came to China in 2010 on a service trip to help some local Chinese with their English. They were teachers. They want to improve their English skills as they taught their students. And so we came to China. At first, I didn't really like it. And I thought there's no way I would never want to live here, because born a Texan, I wanted to die in Texas. And then over the 2 weeks period that we were here, God really changed my heart. And Rebecca had a completely opposite story.
Well, I just didn't like it at all. And so went back and had no interest in ever returning to China, testified before our church that we would never return to China, and we returned to China.
Famous last words, right?
Yeah, I know it. Little Bobby Joe came up to me at the end of the service, little older lady, and she said, "I'm so sorry to tell you this, but I think God's going to send you back to China." And he did. So 2011 is when we moved there.
Oh, that's amazing. And you have a son as well, right?
We do. Daniel is 9. He's actually adopted. So we came here, just the two of us, and we adopted Daniel. He was born right about the time that we moved, but we adopted him in November 2013. He's from a neighboring province.
Oh, cool. So what do you love about living in Wuhan? What are your favorite things there?
Some of our favorite things are, we really enjoy our school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a teacher, and so I taught in Texas for 9 years. And it's just a completely different vibe at our school than it was in a public school. The kids are more innocent here, and they're less exposed to the things that you see in America that's everywhere. And so they're just kids. The school has good academics, because I work at the school, so I can say it has good academics, and it's just a good, safe place to raise our son.
The environment's very safe. Our community is fantastic, of local friends as well as expats like us who live here. And it's just very tight and very, very good. Not perfect, but it's just very, very good.
What was it like when you first started hearing about the novel coronavirus that was going around? What was that experience like for you? How informed were you in the beginning? Because you're kind of in the epicenter of where this thing first hit. The rest of us are all playing catch up. We're on a delayed timeline, but you've already been through this. So walk us through those first few days of hearing about it, and how serious did you think it was?
I think it started just a few miles from actually where we live. Maybe 5 or 6 miles from where we're currently at is where it really started. It started for us in January. We came right back from Christmas break, and we had a 2-week period of school. Then we had Chinese New Year break. We started hearing rumors about this virus that was going around, and we were going to hold a VEX robotics competition at our school. But all these other schools started backing out. Some of us were thinking, well, why are they backing out of this competition? Because it's just a little virus. How bad could it be? So our high school students were going on a service trip to another country during Chinese New Year. And there were some other schools going also on this trip. And they were very hesitant to go with our students because we're from Wuhan. And so they assumed that the virus would be with them. And people at our school, they were they didn't understand this. And I didn't either. I thought it was, well, it's just a little virus. Why would you be upset? And so I remember the day of the trip, the leaders of the trip had to take everybody's temperature. And if anybody had a temperature, they were not allowed to go.
I will say it started a little bit earlier for me, just because what I do at school in marketing and communications. We knew about it in December. And yeah, I mean, just our American mindset was, it's not a big deal. We'll get through this. And the Asians were, no, this is a bigger deal. So we kind of kept downplaying it and downplaying it and downplaying it. And then when people started canceling, that threw it up on the radar a little bit more. And then we left for Chinese New Year vacation on January 17th. And everybody thought we were coming back. And the quarantine happened just a few days later. So, yeah.
And after that, did your opinion of the coronavirus change? Were you able to get enough news to kind of understand what was happening in the province right around you? And how did your perception of the situation that you were in change over the next couple of weeks to months?
I think it changed slowly. I mean, at first, things were closed for Chinese New Year. And so it was very hard to tell what was coronavirus and what was Chinese New Year, because the town was shut down anyway, and that happens every year anyway. We've been through this 9 times. We did start connecting a little more closely to the news, and we did start getting reliable sources. When they shut down transportation and they shut down the bridges, that's when things kind of got to be a big deal, because then they just said, stay home, and they disabled anybody's ability to go anywhere. Yeah, and then that's all you heard on social media. That's all you saw was corona, 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 corona. So yeah, it kind of took over at that point.
Did you have specific parameters and restrictions because of the lockdown? Like, could you not go outside your house, or were there certain reasons that you could go outside your house, but only for those reasons? What were the specific details of the quarantine or lockdown that you experienced?
So the city quarantine happened on January 23rd, and that's when they closed the airport. And I think at that point is when it really hit me that this is something different and something I need to be serious about. Because when they restrict all the travel, that's a big deal. And then, like Rebecca said, almost everything was closed. But around this time, McDonald's closed and Starbucks closed, which never happens during Chinese New Year. And so once those 2 things happened, I realized, okay, this is a bigger deal, because if those major companies can't make money and they're not willing to provide their products, then this is something serious.
So we could leave our apartment complex and we could go out, but there was no place to go except go get groceries. And what China did was, when quarantine happened, they said, stay home, and people stayed home. Now we didn't, because we are a little prideful, a little selfish, and a little independent. So we would walk down to Walmart, one of the few places, and I'm telling you, we would be in a city of 12 million people. We would not pass a soul on that route. We were out because we were independent and we wanted to do our thing, and we would get in there, and others were shopping too, full hazmat gear, okay? And we're wearing a mask because it was the law. We were still kind of flaunting our independence at that point. And in hindsight, it was very prideful, and we should not have done that. But because when they quarantined, they said, stay in your apartment, and everybody stayed in. They weren't forced, but they did what they were told. We weren't forced until lockdown. Lockdown happened on February 17th. And so we had 3 weeks or so where we could leave, but there was no place to go except a pharmacy or a grocery store. So it wasn't very exciting. But then after lockdown happened on February 17th, we just flat out couldn't get outside the gates. Nobody could.
How did you continue to get things like groceries and essential supplies when you actually went into full lockdown and couldn't go outside the gates?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, because like Rebecca said, we do not speak the language. I mean, we've been here for 9 years, but we haven't had a Chinese class in 5 years.
Bad.
And so we can't read characters. Everything is in Chinese characters, and it's just completely different than what we're used to in the English language. And so it was really hard at first. I know. I'm a homebody, and so I like being at home, but once they closed the gates, I could actually feel it closing in on me, and it was just different. And so the first couple of days, we had no idea how to order food.
No, we had food. I mean, we went to the grocery store one day just thinking it was a regular trip during the initial quarantine, and it was mayhem. It was mayhem. The shelves were cleared. people were stocking up, and we thought something's going on that we don't know about. And then it was, I think, the next day or the day after that we learned, oh, okay, the gates are closed on a temporary basis. It was supposed to be a 3-day thing. They would give you papers to leave temporarily. What they ended up doing, I think you asked the question about how did we get food. It was very difficult at first. We got some help because people are so willing to help. The government and all the communities around here set up these apps, grocery ordering apps. We got a little help with how to use it, used it, and that's how we got our food. So we couldn't do our regular sources, but every morning the selection changes and we go to the grocery store app and we order very basic items. They deliver it the next day and it works.
What was the hardest part for your family about the lockdown? How long were you in the lockdown where you couldn't go outside the gates? And then what was the most difficult part of that for you?
We are still in the lockdown. So this is, I forget what day it is.
Day 43 or something like that.
No, 42 is on Sunday.
Okay.
So this is about day 45 or day 46 of being locked into our apartment complex. And so at the very beginning, it was, to be honest, teaching my son, because we're doing online learning. We call it home-based learning. And as a teacher of 17 years, I can say it's a lot easier teaching other people's kids than it is my own, because there's so many emotions wrapped in there, and the role is different. And so at first it was hard for him because he's seeing me as dad and not teacher. And I'm seeing him as my son and not student. And so I know I'm more patient with my students than I am with my son sometimes, because I just have these different expectations. And so it was very difficult just to teach my son and have that relationship. And also just balancing everything between my job responsibilities and being the main lead on the home-based learning parent.
Yeah, and I mean, we have jobs, so you have to do jobs and school and all in this space. And if you've ever been to Asia, we don't live in a big place, so we're all on top of each other. And it was, the first 2 weeks were a nightmare in that regard, and it got much better. Our son kind of resigned to the fact that his teacher was not coming here; it's us.
Did you struggle at all with the isolation aspect of it, or did you have enough community there where you live?
There's a small group of holdouts. There's a small group like us that did not take any evacuation planes. So we have community. We weren't tight before this, but we've taken community to a whole new level. And it's been very, very good. It's been such a great learning experience. We have not been locked inside our apartment. Okay. They did that to some buildings here, but not ours. If that would have happened, then I think a different level of pain would have happened. So the isolation hasn't been that bad because we have gotten outside. God's given us grace and just really changed us in ways to allow us to adapt to this lifestyle. I mean, Edgar likes being at home. I cannot stand being at home. I'm never home. So, but now I am, and I have been all this time. And I don't have none of my regular buddies are here, but God's given us incredible grace to manage this and manage it well.
I'm really curious about your tips, and maybe this is for you, Edgar, for the millions of families here who are just starting to learn what home-based education means and what that means to be working from home in most cases, or many cases anyway, and also trying to school your kids from home. And obviously, it's different than homeschooling. You're not picking a curriculum. This is provided by the school system, as it sounds like maybe what you've experienced as well. What are your best tips for parents who are just starting to figure out what that looks like at home?
Whenever we told our teachers, I said, this is not the same as regular schooling. And so you have to change that framework. In regular schooling, the teacher's in control of the classroom and the environment. And so the teacher knows where to sit everybody. The teacher eliminates distractions in the classroom. If you're in the classroom, there's the rules in front of the classroom that the kids, in the first week of school, they go over these every day, what the expectations are for the learners. And that's completely thrown out when you're at home, because you have a TV, you have a device that's going to be distracting to their students. And they're going to have a couch, not the chair or whatever they're used to. And so the first thing is just to realize that this is completely different. It's a completely different beast, and it's not going to be the same. And so you have to pare it down. And so what we told our elementary teachers is, instead of doing 5 math lessons a week, do 2 math lessons a week, do 2 reading lessons, and just completely pare it down and make it as simple as possible, because the parents, as great as they are not trained teachers. And so I can talk about instructional practices all day, but Rebecca's not a trained teacher, and
Not at
that
all.
she doesn't understand all of this stuff. And so just make it simple for everybody. Our company's goal was to make it a pleasant situation for everybody involved, the teachers, the parents, and the students. And so I think that's where it kind of starts. And there also has to be continuous communication between the parents and the teachers. And so that first day, it took our son 2 hours to do a reading lesson. And having taught third grade, I knew that should have taken 45 minutes. And so that was the big thing of there's a problem. And so that day I emailed the teacher and I said, okay, I just put it in facts. This is what was going on. These are the emotions that I'm seeing from our son. There has to be a lot of communication between the parents and the teachers, and there has to be a lot of flexibility because it is completely different. And so you can't expect the students to complete the assignments the same as they would in a classroom, because my son, whatever his teachers tells him is gold. Or whatever we tell him, no, he doesn't want to do it all the time. And so he loves us and we love him, but he has that streak of independence where he wants to do it his way. But if his teachers said Star Wars is the most vile thing in the universe, he would never watch Star Wars again. And he loves Star Wars. And so you just have to understand that it's just completely different. And so for the parents out there, I'd say create a routine. You know, in school, regular school starts at 8 o'clock, but we start our home-based learning at 9 o'clock. And that gives us time to kind of ease into the day. I make a list of the assignments for him. And I like an organized list. So I'll just list it out for him and we cross it off whenever we're done. And we kind of schedule our day around that. And taking breaks is a big thing. In school, you have recess, and you have recess for a reason. And that's because the kids need a break from the learning. And the same thing happens with us, where after 45 minutes, we take a break. Even if he's throwing a fit saying, I'm going to finish. It's like, no, we're going to come back to this. Go to your room. You can read a book, have a snack, have some playtime, but we need to finish this later. So being flexible is a big thing. And also having a lot of grace. If you're in the house with your family for several weeks or months, you're going to have an outpouring of grace to everybody, and just learn to pray to God and ask for him to control your tongue or your facial expressions, because the kids will see that and you'll see that in them. And it's just, you don't want to fight emotion with emotion. You just want to be a calming voice.
Well, that's really good. You don't want to fight emotion with emotion. Man, that's a big takeaway for some parents right now, myself included, going through this.
That took us years to learn. We read the book Love and Logic, and so that really made sense to us of, okay.
Well, and one thing that he always tells me, because I do the fun subjects, I do art and music, right? And Chinese, which is not fun. But he always says, remember, it's not your grade, it's his grade. So today, and he also reminds me to, put the timer on it. So today we sat down for music. And I said, okay, 11:45, that's when we're taking a photo of this and we're uploading it. We're done. We're done with music. He had done this kind of lesson before, I knew, but he just wasn't in the game. So I tried to coach him through it and all that. And finally, I'm like, it's your grade, 11:45, we're taking a photo and we're uploading it. He probably got a 20-30% on it, but it's his grade. And he's the one who made the choice not to do it. So not my monkey, not my circus.
Good.
Those are two very good phrases that I think people are going to hold on to. Don't fight emotion with emotion, and not my monkey, not my circus. That's awesome. Rebecca, I'm curious, you mentioned earlier that your community grew much stronger in this. Do you have any tips for people on how to build community when we are all trapped inside of our homes?
Go old school and pick up the phone, If you're in a neighborhood and you can get out and walk and go to, now you don't want to be around people. At the beginning part of our quarantine was so good for service. Okay. Eventually most of our people left, but my son and I, we would go do errands. We would go pick up things from the store for people when we could get out. We would make bread. We would make treats. We would pick up food and we would drop them off for people, masks, and hand them through the door. It was such a good exercise to get to serve, to teach my kids serving. We built a lot of community like that. Our church has maintained it since day one. We have a foreign fellowship here. We Zoom or Zoom or Skype or whatever you do, do that. Don't neglect your small group. Don't neglect your church. The small group of us that's here, we just committed to regularly getting together. And some are a little bit more strong, some are really struggling. And it's really the body of Christ how it should be. And then we're all lifting each other up, encouraging each other, because that's all you got right now. This is really what matters, is the people. I mean, a lot of people are by themselves. Call those people, call them. If you're lonely, you know, someone else is too, call them, you know, just connect like you've never connected before. It's not always comfortable, but you have to, because this is the stuff that matters.
A crisis like this seems to strip away a lot of the things that keep us busy normally in our lives and drives us toward the things that really matter. And it sounds like the two of you have really experienced a lot of that over the last couple of months. I'm curious if you've learned anything about yourself. Have you grown personally in any ways that you're willing to share?
Yeah, I'm extremely a high task-oriented person. And so sometimes I think that the task will help the people. And sometimes the people will get in the way of the task because I want to complete the task so that I can help people out better. And so what this has really shown me is that I need to just throw the task away. And so I have my list to do, and I think I have to complete all the lists. And so in the very beginning, it was a struggle of getting my professional life done, but also being a father. Because as a dad, a working dad, you know, sometimes I see my son for an hour or 2 hours a day on a normal situation. And then that would be including dinner time. So you're really talking maybe 30, 40 minutes of good quality time each day. And so I always wanted more quality time. Well, COVID-19 has provided more quality time with our son. And so just being more people focused and less task focused. One of the things that I've been doing lately is more praying for people. Prayer has always been a struggle for me because I'm a Texan and we think we can do everything on our own. And so lately I'm just praying for people every day. And so I have a list on Facebook. I said, if you want me to pray for you, just make a comment and I will pray for you. Because I felt God is really wanting me to lift people up, especially now that we're coming out of the hard part of COVID. And so I know that other people in the world have been praying for us months ago, and it's our turn now to pray for others and to kind of give people examples of what you can do to get through the day. Because you are stuck in the apartment or your house every day for weeks. And so what have we done that can help others?
Yeah, I feel like God's really given us a purpose. I mean, he's taught me just a whole new purpose for this season. He's taught me things about myself, ways that I can serve others that I never knew were strengths. But until you get really pressed and until all your lifelines kind of float away except him, you learn how much strength he'll give you and the things that he can do through you and how he can use you. And it's really pretty cool to have everything. I mean, we don't have it hard, really, relatively, but you know, we don't have a whole lot of freedom right now. And so we've had to depend on him a lot. And he's showing us how enough that is and how joyful that can be. Even though we don't have our regular lives, our regular routine, we don't need it. So he's just taught us so much about ourselves and how strong we can be with him. Not saying that we have anything on our own, because we don't. We have nothing without him. But man, he's given us everything because he said he would, you know. You can do anything through me. He's just taught us a lot about ourselves. Yeah, he's made us praying people. He's made us encouragers. He's teaching us a lot. And our son, I can see it in him. He's maturing.
Do you have any idea how soon you will be out of lockdown? Have they told you kind of when you're going to get out of this?
Sure. They've told us on April 8th, which is funny. Okay, April 8th, that's the first date, and then I'll tell you the amendment to that later. They're really big on not committing to a specific date. It's just not, I mean, you don't do that in life in general if you're not sure. And so April 8th was always the date that the city was going to open. And then we learned this more, and they've been saying that for weeks, and it's been published for weeks. And so we learned just this morning, however, that they've changed the date. So who knows? I mean, we don't know. I'm glad because I think April 8th is too soon for such a catastrophic thing. You can't just open the gates on April 8th. And they've been doing it sort of in phases with passes, and there's caveats here and there, but we don't know now. So I'm hoping it will be a while still.
Yeah, I think we've been overly optimistic here as well in our dates, and we keep having to push back those expectations. And it makes sense. I mean, you don't want to tell people you're going to be stuck for 2 months or 3 months, and so you're going to give an earlier date so people don't freak out. But then as that date gets closer, you realize, no, this isn't going to be as over as our wishful thinking would have brought about. And so you just have to keep pushing it back. So do you have any tips for people who, you've been through this for several weeks now. We are just entering, I think, like our second week of this. Do you have any tips for people who are going into these lockdowns, or maybe have been in them for a little while, on how to cope with the isolation, with being around your family, with the lack of resources, anything you've done to pass the time?
Well, some of the things that we do is we kind of tag off on our home-based learning. Is I take 2 or 3 hours in the morning, and I take the fun subjects like math and science and social studies. So those are fun to me, and so I'm happy to do those. And then I give Rebecca the ones that I struggle with,
Yes.
art. Yeah.
So we tag team work.
Yeah, so in that way you tag team. And then we have an office here, so we just go in the office whenever we need to. And it's also a reading nook, and there's a rower in there, so if we need to exercise, we just row.
Well, and that's one of the tips is make your house functional. I mean, you're not in this for a week. You're in this for a while, and we don't know how long, but we knew when they shut things down, all right, we pulled up the rug, we pushed back the furniture, we brought in the massive piece of exercise equipment, put it smack in the middle of the room. So the house, we made it completely functional. It's not so pretty, but no one's really coming over anyway. You have to make it work for school. We have a desk for our kid. It sits right in front of the TV because that's where he watches a lot of his videos for school. And you just do what you do to make it work for the long haul. It's got to be function right now.
I think also find normal things to do. So we started reading books as a family. We've read Stone Fox, A Long Walk to Water, which I highly recommend. And now we're reading Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
And so we just do that as a family. We read a couple of chapters every day, and our son loves it. He loves hearing these stories, whether they're fiction or nonfiction. We also play games as family. We play board games, card games, not electronic games. And so we try to do something as a family every day.
The routine is a big deal. Edgar said we start every day at 9:00. We get dressed. We don't do the whole PJs all day. We brush teeth just like we would normally. So things like that, we sit down together and we eat lunch. So we have normal routines that we would have anyway, or that he might have in school. And we don't just make it a free for all just because we're home. Even though that's tempting, it's just not productive. You got to have a schedule. Compromise. Be flexible, compromise.
Yeah, and you can't it's not like your normal life, your pre-COVID-19 life. There's certain things you have to give up for the moment. All restaurants have been closed since January.
So we have cooked every meal. I have not eaten out since January 19th. It's fine. It is this season, and we can't get out and get lots of exercise, and I can't go to the health food store. And you just compromise because you know what? Food is food at this point. And yes, we're eating more rice than I would like to, but it is what it is. It's a staple. It'll keep in the pantry, and it's cheap right now. So
I do like to watch the news, but I've had to learn over the last 9 years just to turn the news off because a lot of it's focused on negativity because that's what people are interested in, really. And so just turn off the news, and whenever I'm feeling stressed, I just put on my headphones and listen to some Christian music. There's a song by Matt Redman I'm really liking right now, and just changes my mood whenever I listen to it. And so if I'm feeling kind of down, I just listen to music, and it kind of changes my mind. Also take my mind off of my situation and just think, yeah, it is bad, but there's a whole lot of people in this world that have a lot worse than I do.
Today I talked to some guys in India, 2 different people in India, a guy in Uganda who has no help. And they're dealing with COVID. And then people in the Philippines who, first world and third world problems. It's a big perspective changer. So get some perspective. And just because you can't go to Target right now, get some perspective, but turn off the negative and focus on what you do have, because we all are so stinking blessed.
Yeah, we focus on things we're thankful for. And then like Rebecca's been doing is meeting people on Facebook all across the world and just asking, how can we pray for you? And reach out to people around the world and just see how you can pray for them.
There's always somebody worse off than you. So when you start wanting to get into your own little world, your pity party, and we all have them, and there are some very, very valid reasons. Losing jobs. I've got many friends who've lost jobs right now, and they don't know where, they got no savings, things like that. Reach out to someone else in that situation too. So encourage someone else. When you need encouragement, reach out and try to encourage somebody else too. So
that's great. And great tips for people too. And I really appreciate you mentioning what you did, Rebecca, about perspective. I'm still connected with a lot of people around the world in different places, and hearing their stories and reading their updates on social media about what people are facing in their countries, in some third world settings, in India and Asia and other parts of the world, and how people, especially if they are used to working for the day, being a day laborer, getting their money at the end of the day, and then getting their groceries for the next day on the way home. If they don't get to work, they're not living paycheck to paycheck every 2 weeks. They're living paycheck to paycheck every day. And that's a very different situation. And something, like you said, for us to keep in mind, as in many cases, those watching this are probably okay and well-resourced and have the supplies that they need. And in fact, in many cases, we can have people deliver groceries for us if we want to. We have, the apps like you're talking about. We have those kinds of resources, and not everybody in the world does. So something for us to keep in mind and be thankful for, but also praying for those people that they would be protected during this time. I'm curious about any positive things that you'd want to share from your experience dealing with the lockdown and just the community feel. Have you seen any stories of just great optimistic things that you could share with us? What are the best things that you've observed?
Everything. I don't want to come out of it because everything has been better in quarantine. And I know that sounds stupid. Our family life has never been better. Never been better.
Yeah, before the virus, we would get through the day because Daniel would get home at 3:30, 4, and then we'd do our routine, so you go to bed at 6:30. And then the weekends were always kind of difficult because there was no routine, and staycations were difficult.
Just tired and cranky.
And so during this whole quarantine, none of that has really happened. Or if it has happened, we haven't really felt it. And so we've been at peace during this whole time. And that's only because it comes from God, not because of anything we've done. But we just felt this peace this entire time, and self-control. There have been times where, we did get upset, but not like it went on a regular weekend so we've been here for many, 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 many weeks. And it's been really good. It's been better than pre-COVID-19. Yeah. So that's what Rebecca's talking about.
Just life is slow. Everybody's got this great pause, and there's a lot of beauty in that. I mean, we have seen nature like never in my life. We live in a concrete place, right? So we're not in the mountains or anything, but we have seen what's around us with a whole new set of eyes. We see the birds, we see spring unfolding right in front of us. We take walks in the middle of the day, in the morning, at night. I mean, by ourselves, there's not people around, but we can just stop and get down and watch the snail on the ground, or listen to the birds and look up. I mean, it's just beautiful to have time to appreciate God's creation, which is unaffected by this COVID-19, by the way. And it's beautiful. And it's like he keeps reminding us through nature, through everything around us, that he's here and he's present and he's full of beauty. And I've never noticed most of these things before because I'm always rushing somewhere. And now we just go out looking for the beautiful things. It's wonderful. The slower pace is wonderful.
That's great. I think I'm going to call this video "Everything is Better in Quarantine."
It is. Well, I'm mourning the passing of quarantine. Our situation's not the same as everybody's, but I don't want normal to return because I don't want to go back to the hectic, the consumer, all of that. I don't want to go back to you only seeing your kid for an hour a day and me arguing with them for the other 3. I don't want that. So there's so much good that God's given us in the middle of this. He redeems everything.
That's good. Is there anything else that you would like to share with people who are experiencing a lockdown or a stay-at-home, shelter-in-place order, whatever you want to call it, who are practicing social distancing and maybe struggling with anxiety or discouragement or depression through all of this? Any advice that you would give them, or anything else that we haven't covered today that you would want to share?
Stay inside And I know it's different in America. You can get out more, but try not to, because there's so many ways it can spread. And if you're in your own house, it's just much less likely to get to anybody else. So keep yourself safe and keep others safe, and stay home as much as you can. To the believers, I mean, this is our testimony, how we're living life right now. This is our testimony. This is where our life is exhibiting what we say we believe. So that's a huge thing. I firmly believe faith and fear can't coexist. There's a lot that you might want to worry about, and there are a lot of reasons around you to be anxious. As believers in Christ, he says, give me that burden. He can handle it, and he's handled it. If you look back on your life, if you lived half the lives that we have, he's handled it over and over and over the decades, and he can handle it. And he promises to. But how we respond to what's going on around us, just without words, tells the rest of the world what we believe in and how much confidence we have in what we say, in the God who says he's in charge of all this. Are you acting like he's in charge of all this? We have a great responsibility right now. We have a great opportunity.
That's good. That's really good.
I think for me, it's more about hope. And what is my hope in? My hope is not in scientists or politicians or the people in news. It's on the God that created everything, the God that has prepared a way to the next life. And this life is short. And I know that one day I will die of some way. I don't know if it's this virus or not, but Jesus said to put our treasure in heaven, not the things in this world. And so one day the world will end and then heaven will be there. And so that's my hope. And I also hope that one day we will get through this, because I believe the majority of the world will get through this virus healthy. And it's just we have to do what we may not want to do right now. I mean, in the beginning, I did not like to wear a mask when I went out, but everybody was wearing a mask, and they made it the law here to wear a mask. And so I would wear the N95 mask whenever I went out, and my glasses would fog up, and I didn't like it. I didn't like how it fit on my face, but it kept the germs from coming onto me, kept me from touching my face. And so just having to do things I did not like to do.
Yeah, it's a lot of surrendering that you have to do in this time. Surrendering to, I mean, so much of your rights feel like they're getting stripped away, but surrender to what God is asking you to do. He's asking you to be obedient to, I mean, biblically, we are supposed to be obedient to our leaders. So a theme of a lot of us, so we get together weekly for fellowship, and we talk about the theme that runs just through this group of people who don't talk every day, but we talk once a week, and we all get impressed upon us that God wants us to surrender again and again and again over to him, put aside our own desires and our own wants and needs and all that, and our rights and things we think we should have, our entitlement, and just surrender to him and let him do what he's going to do. Let him lead you, let him guide you.
Thank you so much for everything that you're sharing with us today, the answers to the questions, the advice for us on how to get through this. Is there anything that we can be praying for you moving forward?
Just continued patience with this whole process. I mean, it's been a learning of what not to look at, what to do, what my focus should be, family first and not necessarily my job. And so just continued that. And
my prayer is that we don't waste this time, because we will probably never get this opportunity again. This is an opportunity.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And thank you both for being with me today. And I hope that this video encourages many people, gives them some good advice. And I just so appreciate the two of you for sharing your experience with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes,
it's been
thank you,
great.
Adam.
I appreciate it.